Hi, everyone. My name is Olga Joshi Hansen. I'm Chief Program Officer at Grantmakers for Education. On behalf of our team and our panelists, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day today to join us for the last in a series of briefings and webinars that we've done in partnership with the U.S. Department of Education and in collaboration with the Council on Foundations and Hispanics in Philanthropy. Today is about raising the bar, achieving academic excellence. Our moderator, Robert Medina, he's the director of the English Learner Program at Sobrato Philanthropies. He will be moderating us, but before he begins, I want to just pass this off briefly to Sheetal Shah, who's Senior Advisor for Strategic Partnerships in the Office of the Secretary at the U.S. Department of Education, just to ground us in the last of what has been a series. Sheetal, welcome, and thanks for joining.
Great. Thank you, Elka, and thank you to the GFE team for co-hosting this for almost a full year now. And just to refocus us as to where the Secretary kicked us off in January 2023 here with these three amazing organizations, but also January 24th, he kicked us off with our Raise the Bar, Lead the World agenda, which focuses on three main pillars of how we can help ensure that all students and every learner are prepared to become engaged globally as well as in their own communities. And so the three pillars, just to ground us, are achieving academic excellence, boldly improving learning conditions, and creating pathways for global engagement. And the academic excellence component really focuses on out-of-school time, community schools, delivering a comprehensive and rigorous education for every student. And then the boldly improving learning conditions, we're really focused on supporting the mental health and well-being of our learners, as well as addressing the educator shortage and ensuring that every student has the opportunity to also experience a teacher or an educator that looks like them and that can relate to them. And lastly, creating pathways for global engagement are really focused on two key areas: creating career pathways, college and career pathways for all students, so they have the opportunity to make a choice. And secondly, providing every student with a pathway to multilingualism. And today you're going to hear from my two amazing colleagues. Robert is just about to introduce them, and we're going to focus on early learning, which really cuts across all of these pillars that I just mentioned, as does multilingualism, right? We know multilingualism, as my colleague Montserrat is going to go into, supports academic excellence in our students in achieving those goals. So just wanted to reground us, and thank you again, GFE, for having us. And Robert, off to you.
Thank you so much, Sheetal, for kicking us off with a little bit of context setting from the department. And it's such a pleasure to be in this space with the colleagues on the line and also with all of you kind of listening and watching from all over the country. And thanks to GFE, the Council on Foundations and Hispanics in Philanthropy, for this opportunity. I'll just say a few words about Sobrato Philanthropies and dig right into the conversation by introducing our colleagues here. So at Sobrato Philanthropies, we're a family foundation based out of Mountain View, south of San Francisco in California. And we in the education program partner with advocates, grassroots organizers, educators, storytellers, families, and young people to uplift our English learners and multilingual learners in California's education policies and systems. So we work at the state level in and around the Sacramento ecosystem, and also have deeper investments in two regions of California, which are LA County, where I'm dialing in from today, and Fresno County within the broader Central Valley in inland California. And at the core of our work, we really believe truly that as a state and as a country, our schools need to serve, affirm, and celebrate the diverse languages, cultures, backgrounds, histories of all of our students and families. So that brings us to the conversation today that we're about to have with the folks on the line here. Like all of you, we at Sobrato have also been reflecting on the impact of the pandemic on our students, particularly the students who have been most disproportionately impacted and who are furthest from opportunity, including our English learners, our immigrant students, our low-income students, and our students who have consistently been underserved by the system. And we're getting sobering data, right, and insights from partners around the field around what that impact has looked like academically, socio-emotionally, financially for our families, and on and on and on. So I mentioned that as just context for the insights that we're going to dig into with our two panelists here from the department. And I'm thrilled that we have them because they have unique and important vantage points for us in philanthropy to learn from and really understand as we all in our sector move forward in supporting our youth and our families and our students in this post-pandemic moment. So I'll start with Swathi. Swathi Adarkar is a Deputy Assistant Secretary for Early Education in the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education in the department. She has served as a National Policy Director for Start Early and as President and founding CEO of the Children's Institute, an early childhood policy and advocacy organization in Oregon. And then we also have Montserrat Garibay, who is Assistant Deputy Secretary and Director of the Office of English Language Acquisition, or OELA. She has served as Senior Advisor for Labor Relations in the Office of the Secretary and has been a bilingual pre-kindergarten teacher for 8 years and a national board certified teacher in Austin, Texas. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Swathi, to get us started.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome, Robert, and to GFE and partners for hosting this. I'm delighted to be with all of you and happy November and to be joined by my wonderful colleagues. So Sheetal gave the broad overview as sort of a reminder of our Raise the Bar initiative at the department. This focus on early learning fits in that first area that she mentioned around achieving academic excellence. And we've been making some exciting progress at the department on connecting the early years and the early grades, and really appreciate this opportunity to share this with you. The Raise the Bar early learning agenda has 2 tracks, and it's framed in a pre-K third network and is kindergarten centered. The first track is expanding access to high quality preschool and encouraging school districts to leverage their Title I funds that have been significantly increased during this administration. And we are looking and encouraging schools to build those critical partnerships with Head Start and community-based programs so we can reach more children. The second part of that 2-track strategy is to build kindergarten into a more sturdy bridge between the early years and the early grades. Take a look at this slide that we have up, and it will help to illustrate why we have this 2-track approach. First, note there's a 6-point gap at kindergarten entry between low-income students, low-income children, I'll say, entering kindergarten, and their more advantaged peers. Research confirms that high-quality preschool can reduce gaps before kindergarten by providing children those critical early learning opportunities for skill building and development that are so critical to being successful in early elementary education in those early years. Second, please note this gap increases to 11 points by the end of kindergarten. This gap is much less known or focused on, and data confirms what common sense tells us, that everyday attendance matters in addition to quality instruction in the classroom. We know that kindergarten, even pre-pandemic, has had the highest rates of chronic absence and has gotten dramatically worse. This 11-point gap persists into and through the elementary grades and makes early school success, and as the 2022 NAEP scores show, grade level reading and math proficiency beyond the reach of a significant number of children. And that's why we have so many children at this point stranded on the wrong side of an even larger gap. These children, as Robert referenced, are primarily low income, children with delays or disabilities, and are English learners. Why is the department focused on kindergarten? Because, as the slide shows, kindergarten is an inflection point. It's predictive of which students will experience early school success and which will not. We focus on kindergarten because it is the first at scale early learning opportunity in a school setting to provide those critical supports and interventions needed to assure on-track development. And because kindergarten presents an important opportunity to partner with parents and families and build those relationships, routines, and habits that are essential to family engagement, everyday school attendance, and early school success. At the department, we're using the levers available to us to advance this agenda. From the bully pulpit, we have amazing leaders from the secretary to the deputy secretary and across the department who've been in the classroom. They've been principals, they've been superintendents, they've been state chiefs. They know this work, and they're carrying this message across the country. Through our grants, we have a full-service community schools focus through an invitational priority on this kindergarten Sturdy Bridge work. And we have a chance through many other grants, through formula and discretionary, to help support this work on the ground. We partner very closely with the research arm of the Department of Education, the Institute for Education Sciences, that has a robust early learning network of research teams across the country focusing on pre-K third. We also work closely with cross-agency collaboration, particularly in the early learning space with Health and Human Services that has the majority of federal funds for birth to 5. And we work with them on shared priorities, such as dual language and English learners, high quality preschool, inclusive classrooms and practices. And last by no means, we provide technical assistance opportunities. Last week, we launched the Kindergarten Sturdy Bridge Learning Community, supported by the Frank Porter Graham Child Development Institute at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. 17 states have raised their hands and signed on to focus on their strengths, priorities, and needs, learn from each other, and highlight for all of us what's working, where, and why. You see here up on the screen the 17 states that have signed up, and we're so excited to be working with states across the country. There's a state strand of this work as well as local strand, and folks are looking to their local communities to help lift up and recognize bright spots and exemplars across the pre-K third spectrum. By bright spots, we mean pieces of that pre-K third puzzle. It could be an effective kindergarten transition program, an approach to professional learning community that supports teams to work on vertical alignment across grades. A great example of a play-based learning strategy or effective multilingual learning. Exemplars are those who are working to put those puzzle pieces together so we can create a seamless continuum for young learners across pre-K third. There are several conditions that are really important to building the seamless continuum. A few examples include intentional and systematic alignment for continuity of services, supports, instruction, relationship, and data sharing. Authentic partnerships with families, caregivers, and parents. And that all-important blending and braiding of funding to facilitate alignment, collaboration, and equity. Many of you will be familiar with this slide because these are often known as the system reform levers that many of you in philanthropy have been diligently attending to. We've been calling them the enabling conditions for success. How can philanthropy help support and move this agenda? We'd love to work with you so that you can amplify the Kindergarten Sturdy Bridge message among your grantees, partners, and networks across philanthropy. To share your research, your experience, and your expertise on the substantive issues that we've just been highlighting so far and the key populations who really need our support. English learners, kids with delays and disabilities, learning differences, to name a few. And we'd love to partner with you as we work to identify, recognize, and celebrate these pre-K third bright spots and exemplars. We look forward to learning with you and from you. Thank you so much.
Very much appreciate your remarks, Swati. You give us a lot to think about, from the data to these enabling conditions for success, and we'll be coming back to these in our conversations in just a moment. But I'll turn it over to Montserrat for her thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert, and good afternoon. Buenas tardes. It's a pleasure to be here with you all and share a little bit of the work that the Office of English Language Acquisition is doing. Next. So as my colleague Shito was saying, on January 24th, Dr. Cardona announced the department's Raise the Bar, Lead the World initiative, which includes these three important focus areas that we're working on. And one of the things that Dr. Cardona really encourages us is to foster a new multilingual generation of Americans, strengthened by their direct identities and supported in their education and prepared to lead our country and around the world. Next. And next. And at the Office of English Language Acquisition, as I was sharing, we're focused on providing every student with a pathway to multilingualism. And, we have been, what that entails is to provide every student with a pathway to multilingualism. And again, Dr. Cardona continues to engage with stakeholders across the country about this initiative. And he has stated that raising the bar to provide these pathways to multilingualism means improving our bilingual and dual language programs and to really follow the research on second language development. And we know, of course, that a focus on multilingualism and the linguistic outcomes of our students requires a focus on developing their linguistic assets and on the education workforce. So again, the Office of English Language Acquisition continues to partner with researchers and subject matter experts to examine promising instructional practices for multilingual learners and consider their learning environment and how this impacts the lives of our students in different ways. Next. So why does this matter? Well, first of all, we know that English learners are one of the fastest growing populations. We know that a number of them speak more than one language at home, and that number has tripled in recent decades. Also, we know that as of 2019, there's more than 5.1 million English learners enrolled in our nation's public elementary schools and secondary schools. And we also know that adults who are multilingual have access to better jobs and higher pay. And, according to the Ethnologue of, there are 115 indigenous languages spoken in the US, and today, there are two that are very healthy, but 34 of these languages are in danger, and 79 will extinct within the generation without serious intervention. So we cannot, of course, allow that to happen, because that will take along the rich cultures and languages that our students bring to the table. So we want to make sure that we're pursuing that and amplifying the importance of multilingualism. Also, according to the 2020 US Census Bureau, only 20% of Americans can actually converse in 2 or more languages, compared to 56% of Europeans. When you go abroad, you go to Europe and you see all these different communities speaking more than one language. But when you come here to the US, English is kind of what everybody highlights or speaks. Next. So we know, again, multilingualism as well as bilingualism we have a significant academic, cognitive, economic, and social-cultural benefits that we really need to elevate. We also know that multilingual students have a broader and a deeper vocabulary, and they're able to communicate and problem solve as well, and they're more empathetic as well, and they can have better multitasking skills. And just here's some data. In Florida, just workers who speak both Spanish and English can earn up to $7,000 per year more per year than those who only speak English. Also, a study in Southern California found that being bilingual is associated with an annual wage gain of 2,200 more than English monolinguals, even after after their years of education. So again, it is being multilingual. The Secretary Cardona says it's like having a superpower, right? And the ability to communicate in multiple languages, just it's an asset for the communities. Also wanted to share with you all there are approximately 3.3 billion bilingual people all through our world, which accounts to 43% of the population. And again, there are many research that support the importance of being multilingual, but one of them that we keep hearing about is there's a growing evidence that suggests that lifelong bilingual people is associated with the delay of diagnosis of dementia, which I think it's very interesting, and not many people know about it. Next. So with that, we have identified 3 key levers to provide every student with a pathway to multilingualism. And we know that firsthand and foremost, of course, we want to center on our English learners. And if we're going to do that, we have to ensure that there's equitable access for English learners to the programs that recognize their language, expand their language while they are learning English, as well as making sure that they have access to advanced placement programs. And in all of those programs, we need to ensure that they head down to a trajectory of academic achievement. Now, we're working hard to ensure that we develop and implement processes that enhance, first and foremost, their civil rights, and what we know we ethically and morally are responsible for providing all our students. So we got to also diversify our bilingual and multilingual educator force, because we know that there's a big shortage of educators. But we also want to provide technical assistance and funding opportunities to disseminate information about evidence-based state and local evidence-based research at the state and local level. So we know that in our role here at the department, it is our responsibility to elevate some of where this is happening, just like my colleague Swati was sharing, bright spotting those places that are really doing it well, because there is no need to reinvent the wheel. There's best practices everywhere, and we can all learn from one another. And our role is really to make sure that we're doing that. Finally, we want to also make sure that there's quality education for all our students, because knowing more than one language is important and is an asset. And we also want to make sure that these high quality programs are available for every child, and of course, following research-based as well. Next. So now I want to share with you our Office of English Language Acquisition priorities to amplify multilingualism for all. And so for the next 14 months, we are really focusing in these 4 areas, which are early learning, family engagement, dual language, and syllabi literacy. And these, as you can see, they're in a circle, they go all together. And if we have a strong foundation in early learning and family engagement, then we can do good with having good dual language programs. And then our students can have earn their syllabi literacy. And again, in the upcoming months, we have different ways to really promote these best practices, but also these programs that really are going to highlight and amplify the importance of multilingualism for all. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Montserrat, for giving us an inside look into what OELA has been up to recently, and some of the great work coming out of your shop in terms of the priorities and the levers that you're really looking into really disseminate as you speak to colleagues nationally. This is a very exciting kind of stage setting for the conversation we're about to have, because there's ample opportunities to really think about the big questions that we in philanthropy have been thinking about as well, with respect to our role in supporting our partners to engage in the kind of systemic, holistic, aligned and coherent, to your point, Swati, work that really uplifts our children and youth, particularly those who are most marginalized in our systems. And I want to start with you, Swati, with your presentation. One of the exciting elements of the broad areas of work that you described is the call to align, the call to integrate, to go from siloed to connected in a continuum, and to really think about the continuum of experience that we want our children to have as they enter our systems. So I'm wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on what that alignment looks like based on the bright spots that you've seen, and what does that call on philanthropy to rethink or to think more about as we engage in grant making?
Thank you, Robert. I think how we get out of working in our silos is just such a big challenge, particularly because students aren't in just one category of need often. And so how we think about comprehensively meeting the needs of children's development broadly and engaging their families directly in that as partners is a key underpinning for all of us across the work of the department. I mentioned our collaboration with HHS very intentionally, because a lot of times when people talk about early learning, I think that where our minds go, of course, because learning begins at birth and language acquisition, it's amazing to see children who can learn, multiple languages before they speak, which is incredible. But we work closely with Health and Human Services because those very earliest years in terms of supporting health and development outside of Part B and Part C, which is support students with disabilities, resides there. What we're really trying to do in terms of building this continuity is think about not only preschool, but what happens after preschool. So we've done a lot of great work across states to elevate preschool. States are funding preschool. It's really exciting to see. I spent a number of years of my life working on that. What is challenging is when families hit the schoolhouse door, particularly coming from a Head Start program or another state-based program in which there's deep family engagement, there's an understanding of home language. These are capacities for continuity that we really need to think about in terms of what quality instruction looks like in the early grades. So we're really leaning into those early grades as an important part of early learning and wanting to make sure that they're really informed by what we know about child development and the science of learning. I'm always staggered to think about the fact that we have only one state in the country that requires principals to have training and education prior to being a principal in child development. And we think about how formative that is as we think about social emotional development, multilingual learning, all of these domains and how that interface with early brain development. And so going back to your question about continuity, there's so many pieces of what we need to do to work on continuity, and that was in that list of the enabling conditions, because continuity requires working across funding streams. It means professional development that's shared. And that first data slide is the reason why we need to build a seamless continuum. So I don't know if that gives you a little more thought about why that's a priority. This issue of bright spots and exemplars is really important around continuity. Boston Public Schools has been well studied by researchers like Christina Whalen and supported by IES. But there are more examples out there. I mean, kudos to Boston. But there are other folks, SEAL, you guys are supporting that. We have some wonderful examples, but we need to lift them up and we need to hear from the field. Because the reality is where this work is happening is on the ground. And there are folks discovering things that really work in particular local contexts and communities. And until we can hear from folks directly. And that's where you all, through your grantee networks, know what that work is. And so we really need to partner with you. And not everyone has it down. This is not a continuum that people have nailed. I think we need to acknowledge this is emergent, ongoing work, but there's some urgency around it, particularly after the pandemic, in terms of how kids are showing up in elementary school without the set of supports. You know, the other thing I want to mention is that as we think about social emotional development and the other domains of development, that kindergarten year is a really critical year to begin to support children's learning and know where they are. We've had these great conversations, thanks to Montserrat when she was in her previous role with as labor advisor, as we've talked directly with educators who keep telling us how overwhelming it is when you have a kindergarten class and kids have come from all these different settings. Where do you begin? And how do we know where kids are on their developmental trajectory? So we're really eager to lift up how we make sure those developmental supports from behavioral challenges to physical health challenges and the other kinds of support kids need, so that by the time the kindergarten year concludes, we know everything we know about the supports those kids that each child needs, so that the first grade teacher and that warm handoff can really take on differentiated instruction. So we're really trying to bring development back into the kindergarten classroom.
Really appreciate that, Swati. And I'm hearing both the call for philanthropy to really think about just elevating bright spots. How do we identify, document, share, and learn from what's working out in the field, and given our relationships with multiple kinds of organizations around the country? And at the same time, I'm also hearing a call from you for philanthropy to think about the interconnections, to think about the way silos need to be reconnected or connected in new and powerful ways for the kind of aspirational change that we all hope to see in our systems to happen.
Absolutely. And also what's working. You know, let's focus on what's working and why, because I think at this point in time, there's just not a broad understanding that there are some places really getting things moving. And we have this is a time of such challenge in terms of what's happening in the world and in our country. And educators are working harder than ever. And, you know, many of them are doing that heavy lifting and partnering with families. So let's try to get in there and lift up those voices. A lot of times we're not really hearing from the field in a way we could. So we'd love your help around that.
Absolutely. And I want to, Montserrat, bring you into this conversation as well, starting with this theme of alignment and connectedness, because as Swati was pointing out, language and the development of multilingualism as a superpower is part of that vision and the equity lens that you uplifted, Swati, in your slide about the enabling conditions for this kind of success. So Montserrat, would love to hear a little bit more, especially when you speak to the priority around bilingual education programs, dual language programs that really cultivate the multilingualism of our children. Can you speak a little bit more about what those really look like, what you've seen in your travels, speaking about bright spots that really show us the way that language is developed in this aligned, intentional way?
Yes, of course. And thank you. I mean, I think, you know, one of the great things about working here at the department is that we're able to travel through the different states and to see what's really working. As a teacher, I always say sharing is caring, and sharing best practices and really sharing where these places and how these places are doing the work it's very important. So actually, just recently, I guess less than a month ago, we were the secretary visited the Mark Twain Dual Language Academy in San Antonio and talk about like best practices and just really a school district that is really aligned with the four priorities that we have, and how these priorities, if they have a strong foundation, are really making big a big impact in those communities. So for instance, the Mark Twain Dual Language Academy, it is really geared to English learners, because we know, as research says, dual language, students whose language is not English, if they're able to really have a strong foundation in their language, they're able to learn not one but multiple languages. And in this place, we met with the superintendent, with the principal, the academic chief, and they really kind of share with us how they have been able to really communicate with the community about the importance of dual language, and how it, for so many, and in so many families, we've had families that say, no, I'll send my child to school, I'll teach them Spanish, school teaches them English. And really, for instance, how this school has really kind of shifted the importance of knowing how to read, write, and speak both of the languages, and how really uplifting those fonts of knowledge that our students bring to the table and their parents can really create a true program where one group is learning from one another, and how they're able to see that. So we've seen that in terms of dual language there in San Antonio. I was recently in Massachusetts and attended the Worcester Public Schools, and they were sharing with us how they have really uplifted their SILO biliteracy program that started with 17 students in 2019 graduating with their SILO biliteracy. And the SILO biliteracy, it's a diploma that says that they can speak, write, and talk and write in another language other than their first language, English. And some students surprisingly speak multiple languages, right? But in 2019, they started with 17 languages. Now, come 2023, just in May, they graduated 121 students, and in 15 different languages. So they have been able to really put systems in place with their school board policies, even working with their community county on how to promote this great SILO biliteracy. They were sharing with us, they started this marketing campaign within the city council, where they have the pictures of the students graduating with their SILO biliteracy, with a quote saying how learning a different language has transformed their life. And these marketing pictures are all over, in the buses, in the schools, and it has really promoted this demand of having these great programs in the hands of all students, but focusing on English learners. So, to me, it's again, what the work that we're doing here at the department is to really showcase where this is happening, and to really create connections with other communities that are really excited about starting their programs, to make sure that we have in a way create demand for this program, so we can have more students really learning more than one language.
And Swati, I saw you go off mute. I'm eager to jump in. Do you want to speak to a little bit of the bilingual education model within the context of the early years?
Actually, that was accidental. My apologies for not being off my mute. But I'm very excited about the work that's happening in the department to connect to early learning and look at supporting English language learners. Monserrat and her team are doing an amazing job around that. But I think earlier I was sharing that work is often, when we think about early learning, often focused on in the earliest years prior to kindergarten. And we even have these terms that can be confusing. We have multilingualism, we have English learners, we have dual language learners. And what we really want is for children to keep that home language, and to do that, and to have parents supporting their learning in that language. If they don't know English, it has huge benefits and outcomes as kids go into the elementary grades. Often I've seen in work with elementary schools, parents not being hesitant as to whether or not, now that their kid is going to this more formal schooling, how they can be a part of their students' learning journey. And one of the things we're trying to do in building that sturdy bridge is make sure that a home language is a really important part as children and young students get more and more proficient in their English language. I just wanted to make sure to give a shout out to some of the funders who've been on this early learning journey with us. I was remiss in not mentioning it earlier, but you asked about continuity, and I think it's great to see that there are some funders who've been at this work and have that as a priority, and have really appreciated the thought partnership and philanthropic support and collaboration from Heising Simons and the Foundation for Child Development and Stone, who've really been eager to support this work. And, we really appreciate their experience that they're bringing to this.
Terrific, Swati. And I think one of the takeaways for me from your last remarks, from both of you, is the intentional efforts that you all in your respective roles and the agency as a whole is taking in order to really uplift language as an asset and flip that paradigm, right, from multilingualism being viewed as a deficit, something that needs to be addressed and corrected, to really celebrating and bringing that into the learning environment in really thoughtful and meaningful ways. And the bright spots that you both highlighted really speak to how that work really happens, how that magic really happens on the ground. I want to go back to a theme that I think, Montserrat, you spoke to in your remarks, but I think both of you would have some thoughts on this, is the question of the workforce. I think for many of us in philanthropy, ensuring a well-prepared, racially and linguistically diverse educator workforce is a top priority. And we're seeing it here with colleagues in philanthropy in California, and I'm hearing it from colleagues all around the country. And just would love to hear from each of you, just from your respective domains, what is the department's main kind of priorities around supporting the workforce? And are there ways that you see philanthropy in particular being able to uplift or amplify the efforts that you're undertaking in your respective roles?
Sure. I mean, I can talk about our two big, so OLAP has these two big grants, the National Professional Development Grant, which I'm actually a recipient of. When I was in teaching, I was able to receive the NPD grant and was able to get my master's in bilingual education. But this is just one example of how transformative these grants are, especially because they are focused on providing entities with professional development activities to really improve English learners' education. And also it's this, we provided 44 grants last year, and these grants, we had like 156 grantees applying and only 44 grants were released. But these are very thoughtful grantees that in their applications, they were thoughtful on providing professional development for paraprofessionals to get their certification to become teachers. Some of them are really focused on parent engagement and early childhood. So they're and I can put the link of the National Professional Development Grant Program and what that entails. And of course, we would love to have more money so we could give more of these grants to more people, but that's not the place. But I think that's where philanthropy can really be part of really uplifting some of these places that they just need a little bit more money, or they need just that seed money to start those opportunities. We also have the NAM, the Native American grant, which I will also put the link in a sec, but this is the Native American and Alaskan Native Children in School grant, which we're releasing six grantees six grantees in the upcoming weeks. But the purpose of this Native American and Alaskan Native Children in Schools program awards these grants to eligible entities to develop and really enhance and provide instruction and support to Native American students who are identified as English learners. And we know that, as I was sharing in my presentation, that there are so many Native Americans that are losing their language. And this is part of these grants. They're able to really uplift that and make sure that they are able to revitalize their language. But those are two very specific grants that we provide through OELA.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Montserrat. And as folks think about questions and drop them in the chat, we already got one that I'd like to put on the table for either one of you who wants to jump in. Michael shared this question. Does anyone know the status of education broadband licensure in terms of using it to advance digital equity, educational instruction, and environmental justice?
So I know that part of the Biden and Harris administration, they have provided monies to low-income communities to make sure that they have technology available for the communities, whether it's through bonus from different marketing, not teleworking or digital, like Verizon and other telework networking companies. So that's one. I can look for more information on how that, but there has been a very big effort from the Biden and Harris administration in providing, especially after COVID, providing those resources to especially also rural communities where we saw that, they were not able to have these opportunities. We saw actually from different communities where you had a household with 5-6 children and they all had their laptop and their broadband was just saturated and they were not able to all connect, right? And they would go to the McDonald's. And so this is a big effort from the Biden and Harris administration in providing those opportunities for the communities.
No,
I hope that responds his question.
No, thanks for connecting the dots there, Montserrat, not just to some of the things that the agency's doing, but also to the context coming out of COVID and the digital equity conversation that I think that our shared moment really sparked for all of us. And for Michael and for others who are interested in this question around digital equity, I know Sheetal just shared some links in the chat and some additional context for folks to follow up on. Now, my next question, and this built on something, Swathi, that you shared in the slide with enabling conditions for success, is this question of assessment. As you know, in philanthropy, many of us invest in research and development and supports around assessment systems, measurement and assessment systems. And we also recognize that our schools are increasingly serving diverse populations of students with multiple different intersectional identities, right? So I'm curious, Swathi, what advice would you have for funders who are digging into assessments on how to think about it in the context of your work, and how funders can be helpful in support of this broader PK-3 vision?
So that's a great question, and it's a large topic. I think what I'm discovering as I talk to more and more people who are grappling with what are the kinds of tools and assessments that would really support instruction. During the Obama administration, there was a lot of push and energy around kindergarten entry assessments, but they didn't go beyond kindergarten. And so we have, again, the disconnect as we think about continuity. And so we're really eager to hear from communities and states, where are we seeing the kinds of assessments that will allow educators to team together and engage families so they know how their children are doing across these early grades? Because here we have the situation where everyone knows third grade, right? It's like you're going to have that assessment, feels high stakes as it's very predictive of high school graduation. But what are we doing before that to really look? Literacy is obviously a really important one, but we know that children, that their foundation for learning means that you have to look at all the different domains of development. And so we're really eager to hear from researchers and practitioners and others about sort of what are the tools and strategies that people have found really helpful as we think about these special populations. I mean, it's so often that you have this challenge. I saw this in our work in Oregon. A tool is developed, and then we're assessing how much English a young learner knows versus the content that they know in a particular subject. So there's huge assessment challenges. I don't want to make it seem like it's an easy thing, but the question is, what innovation is really happening in the space that would allow us to look at learning progress and trajectories that support development over this period of pre-K third, and that would not be something that just adds more work to educators, that doesn't give them the support to inform their instruction. And I think we've seen tools that inform policymakers. We've seen tools that inform instructional practice. But, there are some pitfalls in this, as we know, because often what some of the research shows is a tool is developed and then it's not paired with the appropriate professional development. So we don't see things, that off the shelf into the classroom in a way that really supports quality instruction. So I think, like other domains, we've got to get some thinkers and doers together so that these tools are really guided by what we've done in the past that worked, what's been missing, and particularly for the two lenses we're bringing to this conversation, that lens that really looks at early learners for whom they're going to be multilingual, but certainly bilingual, and what appropriate assessments. I mean, one of my favorite things about SEAL is how the evaluation shows that it works for all learners. So sometimes we think we have a strategy underway that's just focused on multilingual learners, and we learn, oh, guess what? It's good for all kids. So how do we develop the tools and assessments that support kids' strengths, needs, and full development is what we're really interested to see in the innovation space. And by the way, if I go out and ask people, it's a complete dearth of the tools out there across pre-K third, from what I'm hearing.
Thanks for that, Swati. And I think you're highlighting some things that, especially for funders who are digging into assessments, the considerations as they're talking to partners and as they're looking for gaps to address in their funding priorities, how to think about that. So that's terrific guidance for us as well. And for folks who are not familiar with SEAL, they're one of our partner organizations in California, and you can find more at seal.org if you're interested. I want to go back to you, Montserrat, because we got a question in the chat from Sandy about policy changes that you believe would advance multilingualism. You spoke earlier to the seal of biliteracy. Are there others that you would like to put on folks' radar, either at the state or at the federal level, that would help the field row in the direction towards multilingualism in the way you described earlier?
Yes, so we are have been doing a list of listening sessions to really learn and hear from stakeholders. But one of the things that we've just started with, I guess about a month ago, started focusing on 5 states, which is Texas, California, New York, North Carolina, and Utah. And these are the 5 states that have 200 plus dual language programs in their states. And we are having conversations with them and just really trying to learn more of what makes their programs successful and how they have been able to really grow those numbers in different languages in their states. So we are starting these roundtable conversations with them, and also working with other partners to really hear and hopefully come up with some type of blueprint or toolkit that can really elevate the work that is happening there, so we can share it and it can be replicated in other states.
Perfect. And I know we're nearing time, so it's a lightning round moment. Just one piece of advice as all of us in philanthropy are thinking about these bigger questions that you've all put on the table. What's one piece of advice you want us to take away from this conversation? So I'll start with you, Montserrat, and maybe Swati will follow.
Sure. I would say it's all about networking and intentional collaboration. Coming from Texas and coming to the federal level, and just really being able to see how different stakeholders come together, and how different came together during COVID to really open up the schools. The places where we've seen that really uplift and be very thoughtful on that process have been those places that bring all different types of people to the table and really problem solve for the better of their community. So yes, and it's not easy work, but I think it's very important work that takes a lot of courage, but also a lot of love, because you, at the end of the day, want the best for your communities. Thank you.
Are you, Swati?
There's such a great urgency to focus on the early elementary grades that get lost in the shuffle. How children develop in those first few grades is so absolutely critical. We really need to bring what we learn from brain development and child development into those early grades. That's my top bulletin, beginning with kindergarten.
Well, thanks to both of you for the rich conversation. Now I'll turn it back to Olka to close out.
Great. Thank you, Robert, for your moderation. Thank you, Swati and Montserrat. So great to have you with us today. Thanks to those of you who joined us today. Thank you for your questions. And we hope we were able to address most of them. There are resources in case you want to take these last couple of minutes to scroll back through the chat. There are a lot of resources that Sheetal and our panelists were dropping in. I just want to let you know that this program will be available on our YouTube channel within about a week. So if you want to watch it again, or you have folks who you think might be interested, please share it. And then we do have some other Ed Funders programming coming up in the weeks ahead. There should be a slide with that in just a second. So on November 13th, we're going to have the first webinar in the future of math, where math education is now and where it should be. If that doesn't sound interesting, I will tell you that we had an almost 3-hour workshop at our recent conference, and everyone stayed the entire time. And then we've got our out of school time monthly field convenings and funder meetup, as well as a member meet and greet on December 12th with our executive director, Nicole Rodriguez-Leach. So thank you all very much. Look forward to engaging with you again soon, and have a great rest of your day.